Hello and welcome to another Q-SYS Designer software release. This time it's 10.4, and in this release there's two main themes: security and scale. Now, speaking of scale, I'm going to be showing you the new headline feature, the NVM Series Video Endpoints. I'm also going to be showing you how you can now onboard all of your peripherals at once inside Core Manager and the new security features that enable that. And then we're going to take a look at some new UCI scripting features and also some quality of life improvements for control. There's loads to talk about, so let's kick it off with NVM. The NVM series introduces a totally new way to deploy network video within Q-SYS. We're introducing new encoder and decoder hardware. We've got new programming methods that are easier yet much more powerful, and it's all built on the MediaCast transport protocol. It's designed for large deployments across a range of spaces, from hospitality, entertainment, through to collaboration, higher education, and government. Let me show you the new NVM hardware. So this is the NVM 302E. That's the new encoder, and here we've got the NVM 302D, which is, you guessed it, the decoder. Now, both of these are based on an entirely new hardware platform. We've of course got HDMI I/O for the video. There's also USB Type-C on here and Type-A. Now, at launch, that does do KVM style HID routing for keyboard, mouse, touch, but the USB-C port will be supporting audio and video bridging in an upcoming software update. Also a nice thing, they're both only PoE+, not PoE++, so a bit easier on the network power budget. The M in NVM stands for MediaCast. That's the same transport method used for Q-SYS NC series cameras and USB video bridging. So you get familiar benefits like live previews of every input and every output, while supporting high quality video up to 4K 60 444 with a modern, efficient codec. Now, you can read all the hardware details on our website, but in this video, I want to focus on what's changing inside Q-SYS Designer software. So here's a clip from a launch event that we did, where I'm going to show you the new programming workflows and, of course, do a demo.
You know, those who have been around a little while, you'll know that traditionally when you were designing an AV system, you would have a box at the center of it all, and this would be your video matrix router. Now, the great thing about these matrix routers is they were very simple to design around. However, the challenge with them is they were not very scalable. If you needed to expand your system, you'd have to throw away this box and get a bigger one, and it's super annoying, right? So the industry sort of evolved, and we came up with the concept of AV over IP solutions. Q-SYS Video works just like this. So the great thing about AV over IP is it's an extremely scalable solution. However, it's not very easy to design, commission, and deploy. So when we decided to build a video system designed for scale, we wanted to get the best of both worlds. We wanted that video router experience with AV over IP. So we came up with a concept called a routing group. I want you to picture your old school matrix router, because it's essentially a virtual version of that. You can associate as many encoders and decoders as you want with a routing group. It's got an audio output, and it works just like an old school matrix router. Now, I would like to introduce James Martin from our UK team. James?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Matt. So hi, everybody. I'm excited to be here. So I'm going to show you on my computer here a few examples of how you can work with NVM. So before we get into the routing group, or the routing group, as I'm going to call it, I want to talk a little bit about just traditional programming as well. So on my computer here, I've got just a normal MediaCast router, and I can, of course, use NVM in the normal way. So I can use it just like one of the NC series cameras. I don't have to be using this new scalable approach, but I probably want to, because as soon as I go over to a routing group, I can actually do much larger systems even more easily. And all we do for a group is we basically just take our encoders and our decoders in the inventory, and we just associate them with the group. And when we do that, we don't need to wire anything up. All I've got in here is the group component, and the only wiring I've done is actually, kind of optional. I've just de-embedded the audio and sent it to a loudspeaker. And just by doing that, I can now switch, for example, all of the displays at once. Now, I'm just going to emulate this design here. Actually, everything with NVM series works 100% in emulation mode, which is really, really powerful. Even things like preview streams, okay? So where you could have a 30 FPS preview on a touch panel or a 1 FPS preview here in Designer. But in emulation mode, you can see I've got these different colored previews, which are just kind of created dynamically, so I can see that the system is working even without any hardware. And The group has a lot of other controls as well, but this all displays thing is very, very helpful. And I could actually now just take those controls, and of course I could just throw those onto a UCI in the normal way. And very, very quickly, I'm now programming a kind of scalable system here. Now, of course, I might still want to actually control a single display. I could just drag in that display component. So right here, I've got a display for decoder 2. I can then switch all displays over here, and inside this component, I could actually be switching that specific display. But of course, the thing is, but what if, for example, I want to access any display across the whole design, across many groups? I'd be back to this kind of thing where I'm dragging in every single component for those. So I'm guessing there's a more scalable approach I can take for that.
We came up with a concept called the proxy control. It allows you to proxy the control of any device in your system, whether it's placed in your schematic or not. You think of your TV at home. It has a dozen or so applications on it, and you can control any one of those applications, all fed to you through a simple user interface, which is the remote control that has a few dozen buttons on it, and that's it. So that's what a proxy control does. I can go into my facility and I can say, hey, that center display, I want to show the basketball game on there. And when you select that display, now you have complete control over that display. You can turn it on and off, volume up and down, and any source connected to that, I can control that source. All of that logic follows the switching automatically. James, can you show us what that looks like in the control software?
Yeah, so I've actually made a system here which is quite a bit like what you were just describing, like a sports bar. And here I have this new component, the NVM proxy. And you can basically think of this as all the controls you might find on any display and the source selection for that as well, and a few other things which I won't go into right now. It can be pointed anywhere we want. So that could scale across a massive, massive system. I'm just using it here quite simply. So I can select different displays that are on different decoders on the left here. And then whichever one I'm selecting, firstly, I've got the source selection for that. So on the right here, you can see I've got my 4 previews for my 4 sources. This is something I've just put together in the Q-SYS Designer schematic, but of course I can go to a UCI like this, a bit more friendly looking, better for an end user. So again, let's select the display, select the source, really, really easy to do that. And this is just using a single component, the proxy. But you can also see here that we've got control. So whichever display I select, I've got on or off for the display, and whichever source I select, I've actually got channel up down. Like imagine these are a set-top box or something. So you can see on the display, as I go through these displays, I've got one power on button, one power off button, but it does it to whichever display is currently selected. And the same for the sources. Whichever source I'm selecting, I've got a single channel up or channel down button for the set-top box. So just like that, with a single component, I've got basically a full system with routing and with control as well. But of course, at some point, I've had to actually tell the system, which products we're using, how we're controlling that. But again, if I go back to a system like this, that's going to be kind of challenging if I had hundreds of sources, hundreds of displays. So Matt, can you tell us about how we can do this in a kind of batch setup way?
Yeah, absolutely. So we came up with 2 new tools, the NVM Designer and the NVM Manager. So now the NVM Designer allows you to create a system with hundreds of endpoints with just a few button clicks. And then you have this really great table view that allows you to see every single device in your system, and any design time property can be set from that single table. And then once you're in runtime, again, you'll have hundreds of devices in your system. You'll want to see all that in a nice table interface that would allow you to edit it very easily. Does that make sense, James?
Yeah, let me just show you right here what I did to set up those controls. Super simple, NVM Manager right here. And NVM Manager could list out, like you said, every device in the system. I can easily filter it, just a subset of those devices. I can just go into edit mode. And now very quickly, I could just select every single source and I could say, hey, these are all the same set-top box. And just like that, I set up the control library. Or of course, I could still go through one by one. So
I guess that's it. I think
It's demo time.
No, that's not it.
Hey,
No,
James,
no,
look what I just found. I was
Right.
just building this off stage casually by myself.
Okay, I'll just
that's why
I'll
that
just
was-
leave. I'll leave.
Okay. All right. We noticed that we can do a lot in emulation mode, but we want the proof to be in the pudding. We want to see it live.
And we want you to do it rather than
Yeah.
us to do it.
Okay.
You're our stunt double.
like this wall, what have we got here? We've got 3 encoders, right? 3 sources. We've got 3 rows of decoders. So there's quite a bit going on. Just to show everybody on the computer here, this is what you would see if you were doing it with like normal NV series. quite quick to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I spent a lot of time making the wiring beautiful.
They're
and
very
aligned.
straight.
Thank
yes,
you.
good job.
Yeah, I try. But still, that's a lot of dragging components, right?
Yeah, James, I feel like you're stalling here, so I'm gonna get this going.
Okay, I'm gonna go into NVM Designer, right? So I wanna design with NVM. So I can go in NVM Designer, hit Edit Mode, Add New. What am I adding? I'm adding a group, okay? A new routing group. So these are all rows. I'm just gonna call it row, like that. I've got 3 rows, so there we go. You can see on the right what's gonna get created. Encoder, I've got 1 encoder per group. I can just leave that, fine, next. And then decoder, I've got 4 decoders per group. So I can do 1, 2, 3, 4. By the way, I can change the naming convention, because I like to keep things organized. And there we go. So now all I'm gonna do is drag in the group. Quick, running out of time, let's drag that in. That's it, I'm gonna hit the button. Time.
Oh.
Thank you.
Just like anytime you push a design to the core, right now the core is sending that design out to all the peripheral devices. You can see that they're all going through their initialization boot up screen. They're also checking their firmware, making sure that everything is up to date.
While we're waiting, I'm gonna plug 2 things. If you want to learn more about NVM, we're gonna have an online training course that gets deployed right around first customer ship. We're seeing all of the gray screens coming online. That means that in a moment or two, this should be fully online and ready to go. And there it is.
We were talking about the previews, just so everyone can see. I've just opened up those groups, and now I've got a preview of every display on all those groups, and that's kind of live in Designer. So that was easy, right? So that's NVM. Now there's so much more to talk about, particularly with all the options around the programming workflow, so keep an eye out for an online NVM series training course coming soon. Now, setting up a lot of video or a lot of any kind of peripheral at scale is great, but of course it quickly brings you on to the next question, which is I can program all this stuff in Designer really fast, but when I actually come to deploy it, I'm still going to have to be setting up loads of different Q-SYS peripherals, onboarding them in Configurator. Feels like it's going to take quite a lot of time. So of course, that brings us on to the next big feature in 10.4. Until now, onboarding Q-SYS peripherals into a system has been a one-by-one process. The traditional flow looks like this. First, you would deploy a design to a core with the peripherals defined in the inventory, including their host names. Then you connect the physical peripherals to the network and the core discovers them. But you've actually got to go into Peripheral Manager and change the host name of every single device to match the ones in the inventory. And while you're in Peripheral Manager, you could also set up other things like the A02.1x configuration, certificate management, and device passwords. Okay, nice and easy. And then you just have to repeat that for every Q-SYS peripheral in your system. So let's do that. Actually, this could take a while. So Peripheral Management inside Core Manager addresses the biggest pain point of that workflow, which is the one-by-one configuration step. But it also centralizes the management of the devices, and it's going to allow you to change settings across many peripherals at once, even in situations where those devices aren't even on the network yet. So in 10.4, there's a new option under Tools, Export Bulk Configuration Template. When I export that, I get a CSV file. Now, this CSV file includes all the devices in my inventory and their host names, but also the entire set of peripheral configuration settings that you typically have to enter manually on each device. So all you have to do to associate these peripheral settings with the hardware that you want is put in the MAC address of the real peripheral that's going to be used. Then on site, the programmer sets up the core and loads the design file. Now, in Core Manager, there's a new option called Peripheral Management. On this page, you can see all of the peripherals that exist in the design file, and you've got a single place to view and change their settings. But at this point, the physical peripherals still are not linked. Normally, this is where you'd be going to each peripheral's web page and renaming it, but instead, I can just upload the CSV file. Once we upload it, the core finds all the peripherals listed in the CSV via their MAC address, and it applies the settings from the CSV to the devices. And that's it. The peripherals are set up and linked. One quick note on the first release of this feature. In 10.4, it doesn't support some of the smallest Q-SYS audio peripherals. That's the NM microphones, the NL series loudspeakers, and the small QIO models. But those will be supported in a future release. So that peripheral manager workflow is enabled by some security changes in 10.4. Now, you've always been able to secure your Q-SYS core and your Q-SYS peripherals by enabling access control. But with 10.4, we're taking a big step towards security by default. The intent is to encrypt communications between the core and the peripherals. And if we can have this system behave like a single secure entity, then we can enable the peripheral management through the core's login. That's why that new peripheral management feature requires that you enable access control on your core. But here's what you need to be aware of for any core running 10.4. Brand new cores are going to ask you to onboard them with access control right out of the box. And if you take an older core and upgrade it that doesn't have access control enabled, it's going to prompt you to turn that on whenever you push a design to it. Now, you don't have to, but it is going to be the right choice for the vast majority of systems. So don't be surprised if 10.4 feels a bit more persistent about security. It's an intentional part of enabling these new workflows and a more secure system overall. But enough about security. Let's take a look at some of the new control programming improvements in 10.4. Now, let me show you some of the handy new control features in 10.4. This one's gonna blow your mind. Well, not really, but it is pretty handy. So it used to be that if you wanted to turn on a lot of control pins, it was quite long-winded. Like if I wanted to see all of the input selection buttons for output 1 on this router, I would have to go through and select them one by one like this, which, you know, doesn't seem too bad, but that time really adds up. Hey, guess what? Now you can just go bang, output 1, output 2, and you can just show all of the control pins for any of these groups straight away. Or if you're a completely crazy person, you can just turn on every control pin for the whole component all in one hit, which I probably wouldn't do, but you can. All right, now this one is for the coders out there. So obviously I've switched into dark mode. Now this is about scripting using the UCI scripting library. Now this has been around for forever, probably. We've got UCI set layer visibility. This is something we've all used for a long time if you've done any kind of UCI programming, and you'll learn about this on, of course, the Control and UCI Advanced Training course. But here, for example, I can set a layer within a page to be true or false, to show or hide it while the system is running. And this lets you do some very cool things on UCIs by scripting those interactions rather than having to work with the UCI layer controller and control logic. Okay, so that's fine. But you've never been able to get the state of a layer to actually say, hey, is that layer currently visible or not? Because based on whether that layer is visible, I'm going to do something on this layer. You couldn't really do that without adding in a lot of extra work for yourself. And you also couldn't bring in the structure of the UCI. So for example, you might have multiple pages, multiple layers. And based on the structure, you want your UCI code to do different things. Now, what you'd actually have to do is tell the UCI script the structure. You'd have to like write that out as a table rather than it just reading what already exists. So now that's all changed, okay? I'm gonna put something in here. We've got get layer visibility. There's actually a bunch of new UCI functions. I'll just show you. Okay, we've got get pages, get page layers, get UCIs, a few other things, but I'm just gonna show you this one for now. Get layer visibility. This lets you be very specific. If you put in arguments to this, you can pull in specific information. But if you just do this, so this is going to return a table of all the UCIs in the whole file, all of their pages, all of their layers, and the visibility of every layer. And I'm just printing that with a little helper thing down here, okay? You can see this right now. It's showing me demo UCI. It's showing me the pages, page 1, and on this other UCI basic example, I've got page 2, page 1, I've got layers within that, and I can see the state of every single layer. So that's pretty cool. Now, what can you do with this? Well, I got a little bit creative with this one because one of the things I'm always trying to do with UCIs is make it as easy as possible to reuse things, to have the UCI almost deploy itself based on the kind of things you're putting into it. Okay, so for example, I've set up here a UCI with a bunch of navigation buttons. Okay, very common. You'd have a navigation bar along the bottom, and these are actually all blank. I know it says audio and camera there, but I'll explain that. They're all blank and they've just got like generic names, and they're all inside a flex box. Remember the flex box came out a little while ago. You can move things around based on how many things are in the flex box. Now I've got some layers. I've got like nav audio, nav camera, for example. All right. Now, what I would normally have to do is come in and manually do some coding. I'd have to manually say, right, this button is associated with this layer, for example. And I would have to come up to these titles and like manually enter the titles for the layers. Now, what I've been able to do here, and I'm not going to explain all of this, but using these new functions is I'm actually looking at all the layers in the code. I'm then pulling the word that's after nav. So like nav camera, I'm grabbing the word camera and the word audio. I'm automatically applying that to my buttons. I'm hiding all the other buttons because there's only 2 layers we're dealing with. And I'm able to automatically title the page as well. So when I run this, you can see that the code just runs. And just with that, I've got my mutually exclusive buttons, I've associated them with the layers, and I've not had to type anything onto these buttons. And I'll show you, if I just add another one, let's say I have a layer for displays, for example, okay? Let me paste that in here. I'm gonna put this up at the top, okay? Nav displays, something like that. Just like that, I'm gonna run this, see what happens. Okay, so now we've got audio, camera, displays, and we've automatically put that bit of text in there. I mean, this is just something I did quite quickly. I might post it on communities if you want to steal some ideas, but I think all of you lot will get very creative with this. Of course, probably use UCI variables as well. It is quite exciting for templating UCIs. So that's Designer 10.4. It's a big release with a brand new video platform, improved security, faster and more powerful ways to onboard Q-SYS peripherals, and some hand new programming tools. As ever, I haven't had time to talk about every feature and every fix in this release, so make sure you check out the release notes when you go and download the software at qsys.com. Thanks very much, and I'll see you next time.